That evening, my mother raised her glass before 600 people in the town hall and said I played dress-up nurse better than being a real soldier. I smiled, didn't argue. Tomorrow, I'd let their own stage read them their verdict. They said the uniform tarnished the family image, forced me to wear a pastel dress for the fundraiser photos. I'd stayed silent to protect my brother. Tonight, I chose to stand straight. My father boasted about his patriotic spirit on local TV while their Support Our Veterans sign covered fraudulent books. I'd show the whole town who truly bled and who just poured wine. My name is Kara Whitfield, and I've flown through sandstorms that could strip paint off metal, but nothing prepared me for the pastel dress my mother held out that Sunday afternoon in Maple Ridge. "Put this on, sweetheart," Beverly said, her voice honeyed with that particular brand of Midwestern passive aggression. "The photographer will be here in 20 minutes, and we need the website photos perfect." I stood in my parents' living room, still in my flight suit from an early morning training exercise with Sentinel Air Rescue. The fabric hung crisp against my shoulders. Patches earned through blood and turbulence lined up in regulation order. My fingers found the worn edge of my name tape, Whitfield, K, the same one that had seen Helmand Province, that had been soaked in hydraulic fluid and other people's blood. Mom, I thought this was about honoring veterans. I am a veteran. Frank looked up from adjusting the massive Proud of Our Heroes banner behind the antique sofa. "Nobody's saying you're not princess, but the uniform is a bit aggressive for the Foundation's image. We're going for approachable, warm." Aggressive. I tasted the word like copper pennies on my tongue. Beverly smoothed the dress soft pink with tiny flowers, something a kindergarten teacher might wear to Easter service. You know how it is. Donors respond better to traditional presentations. And honestly, Kara, when you wear that thing, you look so what? Harsh. She said it like an apology she wasn't actually making. This is about the Foundation's mission. Sometimes we have to make small sacrifices. Through the window, I could see their latest addition to the front yard, a 30-foot flagpole with an American flag large enough to cover a small house. Every house on our street had a flag. Theirs had to be the biggest. The photographer arrived a young guy named Derek who'd shot every Foundation event for 3 years. He positioned us by the fireplace, beneath Frank's wall of civic awards and Beverly's collection of crystal eagles. Mason stood to my left in his crisp police uniform, only 6 months out of the academy, badge gleaming like a promise he hadn't had time to break yet. "Mr. Whitfield, can you hold this?" Derek handed my father a presentation check, one of those oversized props. $20,000 to Veterans Relief Fund printed in bold letters across it, a check that would never clear, just like the dozen before it all photo ops, all redirected to administrative costs that somehow always coincided with their country club dues. I held the dress against my body. It would hang wrong on my shoulders, built broad from years of hauling wounded soldiers from Black Hawks to field hospitals. "Where's my flight jacket?" "In the hall closet," Beverly said, not looking at me. "We'll keep it safe." That jacket had my squadron patch, my combat medical badge, the small tear in the left shoulder from shrapnel I'd caught pulling Sergeant Leo Hart from a burning vehicle. But it didn't photograph well. Apparently. Frank stepped close, cologne overwhelming, and spoke into the wireless mic clipped to his collar. He wore it constantly now, practicing for his monthly TV spots on Channel 7's Hometown Heroes segment. "You know, Derek, my daughter here, wanted to be a flight attendant, but she got to wear a pilot costume instead. Military's good for that letting folks play dress-up." The room laughed. Derek laughed. Mason shifted uncomfortably but laughed too. That younger brother reflex still strong at 28. I didn't laugh. I changed into the dress. During the shoot, Beverly directed every pose. "Softer smile, Kara. You're not interrogating anyone." Flash. "Mason, stand taller, you're the one in real uniform." Flash. "Frank, hold that check higher. Make sure the amount shows." Flash. Between shots. "Derek mentioned the upcoming Patriots Gala. Heard it's going to be huge this year." 600 confirmed guests. 612, Beverly corrected, her fundraising smile automatic. "We're presenting Mason with the Family Pride Medal, and we have a special surprise planned with some military memorabilia for the auction." My stomach tightened. "What memorabilia?" "Oh, just some items we've collected. Nothing you need to worry about." But I saw Frank's eyes flick to the hall closet, and I knew. They were going to auction my flight jacket, the one with my blood type written inside the collar. My call sign, Nightingale 12, painted in small letters beneath the Velcro. The jacket I'd worn for 3 tours like it was a vintage baseball card. After Derek left, I stood in the hallway, still in that ridiculous dress, staring at the closet door. Inside my pocket, my fingers found the piece of fuselage I always carried, a 2-inch square of aluminum from the medevac bird that took 37 rounds and still got 6 critical patients home alive. Mason passed by, hesitated. "Kara, it's fine." "It's not." His voice dropped. "But if I say anything..." "I know." And I did. Our parents' love came with conditions, with cameras, with carefully managed narratives. Mason needed their support to get established in the force. I wouldn't make him choose. Beverly called from the kitchen. "Kara, don't forget cocktail dress for the gala. Nothing military. We want you approachable." Approachable, traditional, soft. They wanted me to be everything except what I actually was, someone who'd earned every thread of that uniform they found so embarrassing. The gala invitation sat on the hall table, gold-embossed letters catching the light. In 3 days, they'd stand before the whole town and auction off pieces of my service like party favors. I picked up the invitation, memorized the time, the place. They wanted to control the narrative. Fine. But they'd forgotten something crucial about military training. We're taught to use enemy positions against them. Their pride would be their battlefield, and I would make them surrender on it. The Black Hawk's rotors chopped through the rain like thunder. 2019, Helmand Province, 0300 hours. My hands steady on the controls despite the hydraulic warning light painting the cockpit red. In the back, Staff Sergeant Leo Hart bled through his tourniquets while my crew chief Paula Green worked compression on his chest. The bird shuddered, metal screaming, but I held her steady. 37 rounds had torn through our fuselage. We were flying on prayers and stubbornness. "Nightingale 12, recommend immediate dust-off at Charlie Point," came through the radio. "Negative," I replied, voice flat as Kansas despite the sweat pooling under my flight vest. "Patient won't survive the transfer. Continuing to roll 2. We made it. Leo Hart lived. Paula Green put him on the stretcher herself while I shut down what was left of my aircraft, hydraulic fluid pooling beneath her belly like blood. That night earned me a Distinguished Flying Cross. I couldn't tell my parents about operational security, meant most of my service stayed classified, but they wouldn't have wanted to hear it anyway. "Don't bring the war to dinner," my mother said the first time I tried explaining why I'd missed Thanksgiving. I'd been flying emergency evac for a mass casualty event. 43 wounded, 6 hours straight in the air. She changed the subject to Mason's Police Academy graduation plans. The memories felt heavier now, sitting in my apartment above Sentinel Air Rescue's hangar. 3 years since my discharge, and I still woke at 0430, still checked weather reports like incoming fire missions. The business was good medical transports, search and rescue contracts with Northridge Emergency Response. Clean work, civilian work. The kind my parents could brag about if they chose to. They never chose to. Instead, Frank told his Rotary Club I played helicopter taxi driver. Beverly introduced me at charity functions as our daughter who works in medical transport, not a real nurse. Mind you, but she helps them out. Every time, I bit my tongue, smiled, played the dutiful daughter because Mason needed their stability, their connections to establish himself in the force. He was a good cop, would be better once he found his feet. I could endure their diminishment if it meant my brother got his chance. But the flight jacket was different. That jacket had been soaked in Afghan dust and American blood. It had covered hypothermic patients when blankets ran out. The squadron patch on the shoulder, a nightbird carrying a medical cross, had been designed by my first crew chief who didn't make it home. Every thread held weight my parents would never understand. My phone buzzed. Mason. "They're really going through with it," he said without preamble. "The auction. Mom has your jacket in a display case with a placard that says, 'Authentic military costumes support our heroes.'" "Costume, Kara." His voice cracked the way it had when he was 12 and I was 15, when he'd found me crying after Dad said women in combat were playing soldier. "It's okay, Mason." "It's not. You flew 3 tours. You have a bronze star." "2 bronze stars," I corrected quietly. "And a distinguished flying cross." Silence. He didn't know about the 2nd bronze star, or the DFC, because I'd never told them what was the point. They'd already decided my service was worth less than Mason's 6 months writing traffic tickets. "You could skip the gala," he offered weakly, "and let them auction my jacket without witness." I stood, walked to the window overlooking the airfield. A civilian medevac helicopter sat on the pad, clean and white, so different from the sand-scarred birds I'd flown. "No, I'll be there." "Kara, please don't." "Don't what? Tell the truth. Point out that their entire foundation is built on stolen valor and fraudulent bookkeeping." "You know?" Of course I knew. I'd suspected for 2 years, confirmed it 6 months ago when I'd cross-referenced their public filings with the veterans they claimed to help. Leo Hart, the man whose life I'd saved, had supposedly received $5,000 in support from Proud of Our Heroes. When I'd called him, he'd laughed bitterly. Never seen a penny. "Mason, I need you to understand something. I'm done protecting them from consequences. After the gala, things will change. What are you planning?" I thought about the folder in my desk emails, bank records, photographs of their charity events that were simply country club gatherings with patriotic themes. Evidence I'd gathered not for revenge but for clarity, waiting for the moment they'd pushed too far. Auctioning my service like a costume rental. That was too far. "I'm planning to tell the truth," I said. "In front of everyone, with witnesses they can't dismiss and evidence they can't deny. They're our parents." "No. They're performers who had children as props. There's a difference." After Mason hung up, I pulled out my old flight log. Page after page of missions, coordinates, patient counts, real service, documented in fading ink, each entry a moment my parents had diminished, dismissed, or ignored. I flipped to the last page, where I'd taped a photo my crew in front of our bird, all of us filthy and exhausted and proud, Paula Green grinning despite the blood on her flight suit, Tom Martinez, who'd die 2 weeks later, throwing a peace sign, me in the middle, flight jacket zipped against the desert wind, standing straight-backed and sure. That woman in the photo had earned her pride through action, not performance. In 3 days, at their gala, in front of their audience, I would remind them of the difference. The forecast called for clear skies, perfect weather for flying, perfect weather for truth. I picked up my phone, scrolled to a contact I hadn't used in 2 years, June Alvarez, investigative reporter for the Maple Ridge Gazette. She'd wanted to do a story on female combat veterans. I'd declined then, protecting my parents' reputation. I wasn't protecting anyone anymore. The text was simple. "Want an exclusive on charity fraud. Bring cameras to the Patriots Gala." Her response came within seconds. Finally. Yes. Finally. Even she'd been waiting for this moment. I looked back at the photo, at the woman I'd been before I'd learned to make myself smaller for my parents' comfort. That woman wouldn't have tolerated stolen valor. That woman wouldn't have let veterans go without while frauds played patriot for profit. Time to be her again. The Patriots Gala glowed like a fever dream. 612 people packed into the Maple Ridge Grand Ballroom, crystal chandeliers throwing light across red, white, and blue bunting that cost more than most veterans saw in monthly disability checks. I stood at the entrance in the cocktail dress my mother had selected navy blue, conservative, Forgettable watching my parents work the room like conductors before a symphony. Beverly's laugh carried over the crowd, that practiced tinkle she'd perfected at countless fundraisers. She wore a gown that cost $3,000, I knew, because she'd charged it to the foundation credit card. Administrative expenses, the ledger would say. Frank glad-handed donors in his $5,000 suit, American flag pin catching the light on his lapel, right above the purple heart pin he'd bought on eBay. He'd never served a day. "Ladies and gentlemen," Beverly's voice rang through the microphone. "Welcome to our annual Patriots Gala tonight. We celebrate what makes America great, our heroes, our families, and our unwavering support for those who serve." The crowd applauded. I stayed still, counting heartbeats the way I'd counted them in Afghanistan, steady rhythm before the storm. Mason stood near the stage in his dress uniform, uncomfortable but obedient. They'd positioned him perfectly in the light, their real soldier son, the one whose service they could understand because it came with a badge and a local address. "Before we begin the auction," Frank took the mic, his television voice booming, "I want to share something special. Our daughter Kara once dreamed of being a flight attendant." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "Well, the military let her play dress up as a pilot instead. She even got to wear this authentic flight jacket which we'll be auctioning tonight for our heroes." Two servers wheeled out a glass display case. Inside, my flight jacket hung on a mannequin, spots where blood had been scrubbed out still visible if you knew where to look. The placard read, "Vintage military costume own a piece of adventure." Costume. Adventure. My fingers found the fuselage fragment in my pocket, edges sharp enough to cut. "Shall we start the bidding at 500? Beverly chirped. 1,000. Someone called out. 1,500. They were bidding on my blood, my sweat, my brothers and sisters who didn't come home. They were bidding on Leo Hart's screams when we pulled him from the wreckage, on Paula Green's tears when she couldn't save everyone, on nights when the only thing between 30 wounded soldiers and death was my ability to fly through hell. 3,000, Frank's golfing buddy shouted, drunk on whiskey and false patriotism. I moved through the crowd, steady, purposeful. June Alvarez caught my eye from beside the stage, her cameraman already rolling. She'd brought 2 cameras, smart woman, one obvious, one concealed. $5,000, Beverly announced, going once, going twice. Stop. My voice cut through the room like rotor blades through silence. Not loud, but trained to be heard over chaos. Every head turned. "That jacket isn't a costume," I said, still moving forward, crowd parting like smoke. "It's not vintage. It's not an adventure." Beverly's smile flickered. "Kara, sweetheart, we're in the middle of—" "That jacket has Sergeant Leo Hart's blood on the left shoulder." I pointed to the spot, voice steady as a medevac in flight. "Type O negative, November 15th, 2019. We took 37 rounds pulling him and 5 others out of an ambush." The room had gone cemetery quiet. Frank tried to recover, that politician's smile stretching wide. "Our daughter. Everyone. Such an imagination. She always loved her little flying stories. Stories." I reached the stage, looked directly at him. Like the story of how the foundation sent $5,000 to Leo Hart that he never received, or the story of how those care packages on your tax filings were actually cases of champagne for your country club events. "You're confused," Beverly said, but her voice had gone sharp, dangerous. "Perhaps you should—" "I'm not confused. I'm done being quiet." June stepped forward, press badge visible now. "Ms. Whitfield, are you alleging charity fraud?" "I'm alleging theft," I said clearly, each word dropping like ordnance. "From veterans, from donors, from every person who thought their money would help soldiers instead of buying Frank's suits and Beverly's gowns." The crowd started murmuring. Phone cameras appeared like fireflies. Mason stood frozen by the stage, torn between worlds. "This is ridiculous!" Frank grabbed the microphone. "Our daughter has always been jealous of the foundation's success. She wanted to be a real pilot, but could only manage medical transport. Medical transport. The laugh that came out of me had edges. I flew medevac in active combat zones, 943 missions, 2,619 patients evacuated, 42 under direct fire. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the venue's audio system, a trick I'd learned from watching Frank's tech rehearsals. The speaker crackled, then filled with sound rotor noise, machine gun fire. My voice calm through the radio static. Nightingale 12 inbound, 3 critical, 2 urgent, hydraulics failing, continuing approach. The ballroom held its breath. That's not a story, I said. That's not dress-up. That's not costume. Beverly tried one last time. Kara, please, you're embarrassing yourself. No. I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd given birth to me but never seen me. I'm embarrassing you. There's a difference. June's cameraman had moved closer, the red recording light steady as a targeting laser. Would anyone like to know where their donations actually went? I asked the room. Because I have receipts. Literal receipts. 3 years' worth. Frank's face had gone from red to white. Beverly's hands shook on her champagne glass, but it was Mason who surprised me. He walked to the microphone, each step deliberate, and spoke in his cop voice. The official one, I'd like to see those receipts. The room exploded. June moved in with questions. Donors demanded answers. Someone called out that they wanted their money back, and my flight jacket hung there in its case, witness to it all. No longer a costume, but evidence of what they'd tried to diminish, to auction, to erase. I stood straight-backed in my forgettable dress, watching their pride become their prosecution. The spotlight they'd built, the audience they'd gathered, the stage they'd set, all of it turned witness against them. They'd wanted a performance. I'd given them truth. Now came the reckoning. The morning after the gala. I sat in District Attorney Colton Price's office with 3 banker's boxes of evidence at my feet. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of exhausted eyes that said he'd seen too much small-town corruption dressed up as civic duty. How long have you been collecting this? He held up a spreadsheet showing foundation deposits matched against my parents' personal purchases. Beverly's spa treatments billed as veteran wellness initiatives. Frank's golf membership as community outreach coordination. 2 years actively, suspected for 3. I pulled out another folder. These are the emails between my parents about messaging. Note the one from last month where Frank instructs Beverly to make sure I wear something soft to events because my military bearing damages the brand narrative. Price read it, jaw tightening. They put that in writing. They never thought I'd look. I have administrative access to the foundation systems. They needed someone to actually file the paperwork while they played philanthropist. He leaned back, studied me. You know what happens if we pursue this. Criminal charges. Public trial. Your parents could face prison time. They stole from veterans. My voice stayed level. Leo Hart needed that $5,000 for his prosthetic. Paula Green's husband died in service. The $10,000 they claimed went to her family actually paid for their kitchen renovation. I need corroboration, witnesses. Already arranged. I pulled out my phone, showed him the contact list. 17 veterans who were listed as recipients but never received funds. 3 former foundation volunteers who quit when they realized what was happening. And June Alvarez has video from last night including Frank trying to bribe her to delete the footage he offered $20,000 from the foundation account. Price's eyebrows rose. He tried to bribe a journalist with charity funds, on camera. While Price reviewed documents, I texted Leo Hart. District Attorney wants to meet. Can you make 2 p.m.? His response was immediate. Already in the parking lot. Paula's here too. We've been waiting 3 years for someone to listen. By 4 p.m., Price had enough for search warrants. By 6 p.m., state auditors were pulling foundation records. By 8 p.m., my phone exploded with calls from my parents I didn't answer. Mason showed up at my apartment at 9:45 p.m., still in uniform from his shift. They're losing their minds, he said, slumping on my couch. Mom's called every lawyer in 3 counties. Dad's trying to get his TV connections to spin it as a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding. I know. He rubbed his face. I've known for a while. I needed the job. Kara. Needed their support to get established. I know. But when they called your jacket a costume, when they were auctioning your service like a yard sale, his voice cracked. You saved lives. You flew into hell and pulled people out, and they reduced it to dress up. I sat beside him, shoulder to shoulder like when we were kids hiding from their arguments. You did the right thing at the gala, speaking up. Too little, too late. No, right on time. I showed him my phone. June's live stream hit 2 million views, the part where you asked for receipts that legitimized everything. A cop asking for evidence carries weight. Mason was quiet for a moment. What's the next move? Public reckoning. I pulled up the email I'd been drafting. I'm organizing an actual veteran support event, not a gala, a resource fair. Free. Leo and Paula are helping coordinate. Medical services, job placement, mental health support. Real help, not champagne and photo ops. When, this Saturday, Town Square, same place Mom and Dad hang their banner. Mason read the announcement. You're calling it Truth in Service, a Real Veterans Initiative. That's pointed. It's accurate. 3 days later, I stood in Price's office again. He had a deal on the table. Your parents' lawyer proposed a settlement, he said. Full restitution to all affected veterans, roughly $300,000 plus dissolution of the foundation, permanent ban on running charities, and 500 hours of community service each. In exchange, no jail time. And if we go to trial, they're looking at 3 to 5 years minimum, but trials are uncertain. So, I thought about Leo Hart's prosthetic, Paula's kids' college funds, all the veterans who'd been promised help and received nothing. The victims decide. If they want the money more than jail time, I support that. The vote was unanimous. They wanted their money. Not revenge. But I had one condition. The community service. I told Price. I want it specified. Veterans Affairs Hospital. Janitorial duties. Night shift. They want to support heroes. Let them empty bedpans for heroes at 2 Price smiled for the first time. That can be arranged. While lawyers negotiated, I coordinated the resource fair. June ran daily updates, each story featuring another veteran my parents had stiffed. The narrative had shifted completely from their control to mine. Friday night, the eve of the resource fair, June called. Your parents want to make a statement at the event tomorrow, she said. Public apology, full admission. Their lawyer thinks it'll help with sentencing. Let them. You sure it's your event? No, it's the veterans' event, and they deserve to see the people who stole from them admit it. I hung up and pulled out my flight jacket, retrieved from evidence. The bloodstains were still there, faded but visible. The patches intact, the weight familiar. Tomorrow, my parents would stand where their banner used to fly and confess. They'd built their pride on lies and performance. Now that performance would become their penance. I traced my call sign embroidered inside the collar Nightingale 12. In mythology, nightingales sang to mark territory, to claim space. Tomorrow, I would reclaim mine. The forecast called for clear skies again. Perfect weather for truth. Perfect weather for justice served cold at altitude, with precision timing and no room for error. Just the way I'd been trained to fly. Saturday morning broke clear and cold over Maple Ridge Town Square, where my parents, proud of our hero's banner, usually hung. We'd raised something different, a simple black flag with medical crosses, the universal symbol for battlefield mercy. No words, no slogans, just service. By 7 a.m., we had 20 booths assembled, real organizations, not photo ops. The VA sent counselors. North Ridge Emergency Response brought their mobile clinic. 3 job placement agencies set up interview stations. Leo Hart, walking steady on his new prosthetic, helped coordinate accessibility paths. Paula Green managed volunteer assignments with military precision. I stood at the center in my flight suit, not a costume, not a statement, Just work clothes for work that needed doing. Microphone check, June said, adjusting the live stream equipment. She'd brought 3 cameras today, plus a backup streaming rig. We're going wide at noon when your parents are scheduled. They'll show. Their lawyer confirmed. Beverly even asked what she should wear. June's expression was carefully neutral. I told her orange would be appropriate eventually. Mason arrived at 8:30 a.m., off duty but in uniform. I'm here to help, not represent the department, he said quickly. I know. I handed him a volunteer vest. You're on parking coordination with Leo. Roger that. He paused. Kara, Mom called me 6 times this morning. She wants to know if you'll stand with them during the apology. No. She says it would show family unity. The time for unity was when they respected my service. That window closed when they called it dress up. By 11 a.m., the square was packed, not with donors or society people, but with veterans and their families, people who needed help and people ready to give it. No champagne, no silent auctions, just coffee, sandwiches, and service members helping service members. At 11:45 a.m., a Blacktown car pulled up. Frank and Beverly emerged, and I almost didn't recognize them. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect presentation. Frank wore a simple suit, no flag pin, no stolen valor decorations. Beverly had on a plain gray dress, her face pale without the camera-ready makeup. They saw me across the square and started walking over. I held up my hand. Stop. Your spot is there. I pointed to the small platform we'd erected, not a stage, just a raised platform with a single microphone. June will signal when to begin. Kara, please! Beverly's voice broke. We need to talk. You need to apologize. To them. I gestured to the veterans filling the square. Not to me. District Attorney Price stood at the platform's edge, papers in hand, the settlement agreement requiring signatures after their public statement. Behind him, 2 state auditors held boxes of restitution checks, ready to distribute to verified victims. Noon arrived like a mission clock hitting 0. June went live. The square quieted. Beverly approached the microphone first, hands visibly shaking. The woman who'd run hundreds of fundraisers, who could work a room like a conductor, now stood speechless before the people she'd robbed. Her voice cracked. She looked at the prepared statement in her hand, then set it aside. We stole from you. The silence was absolute. We created Proud of Our Heroes to make ourselves look good. We took donations meant for veterans and used them for... She swallowed hard. For country club memberships, designer clothes, home renovations. We listed veterans as recipients who never received a penny. We used your service, your sacrifice, as our personal brand. Frank stepped up beside her. Every banner, every gala, every television appearance where I claimed to support veterans was a lie built on theft. His voice had lost its polish, raw now. We turned patriotism into performance and profited from it. Someone in the crowd shouted, How much? $300,000 over 5 years. Frank answered, plus uncounted hours of volunteer labor, emotional manipulation, and false promises. Leo Hart stepped forward on his prosthetic. You told donors my medical care was covered. That $5,000 was supposed to help me walk again. I had to wait 2 extra years. I'm sorry, Beverly whispered into the microphone, but Leo had already turned away. Paula Green was next. My husband died in Kandahar. You used his picture in your fundraising but gave his memorial fund nothing. One by one, veterans spoke. Not angry shouting, just truth, delivered with military bearing. Each story another weight on my parents' shoulders until I saw them physically shrinking, their performed pride collapsing into actual shame. Finally, Frank looked directly at me. Our daughter served 3 tours, flew 943 combat missions, has 2 Bronze Stars and a Distinguished Flying Cross. We diminished her service because it didn't fit our image. We called her uniform a costume. We tried to auction her flight jacket still stained with blood from saving lives as memorabilia. His voice broke completely. We had a hero in our house and treated her like an embarrassment. I stepped forward then, not to comfort but to conclude. You built your identity on stolen valor, I said into the microphone. You created a foundation on fraud. You turned service into performance. I pulled the settlement papers from Price's hands. Now your performance becomes your penance. Beverly signed first, hand shaking so badly Frank had to steady the paper. Then Frank signed, the pen dropping from his fingers when he finished. Price collected the documents, nodded to the auditors. Restitution checks are available at Station 3. Community service begins Monday, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Shift. VA Hospital Janitorial. 500 hours each. They stood there, my parents, stripped of their false pride, their manufactured patriotism, their performed honor. The square continued around them, veterans getting help, volunteers serving, the real work of support happening without fanfare or glory. The jacket, Beverly said quietly, approaching me. Your flight jacket. We had no right. She held it out. My jacket, still in its glass case like evidence of their crime. I took it, removed it from the case, and put it on. It settled on my shoulders like coming home, the weight familiar, the patches catching sunlight. Nightingale 12, back where she belonged. You can go now, I told them. They walked to their car through the crowd of veterans they'd stolen from, heads down, footsteps quick. No one stopped them. No one spoke to them. They'd become ghosts in their own town, their reputation the thing they'd valued above, all destroyed by their own greed. As their car pulled away, Mason appeared beside me. You okay? Yeah. I watched their taillights disappear. For the first time in years, yeah. The fair continued until sunset. Real help given. Real connections made. Real service provided. No cameras except June's documentary crew. No donors to impress. Just Americans helping Americans. The way it should be. That night. Leo Hart sent me a photo him walking on his new prosthetic. No cane. Standing straight. Paula Green texted, Kids College Fund started. Thank you. 17 other veterans messaged with variations of the same theme. Justice served. Dignity restored. Service respected. I sat in my apartment, still wearing my flight jacket, watching the sun set over the airfield. Tomorrow, I had 3 medical transports scheduled. Real work. Honest work. My parents would start their penance Monday night, cleaning hospital floors where real heroes recovered. 500 hours to think about what service actually meant. Their pride had built their stage. Their pride had gathered their audience. And in the end, their pride had pronounced their sentence, read aloud in their own voices, in the town square where their banner once flew. The forecast for tomorrow called for moderate turbulence, perfect flying weather for someone trained in combat zones, perfect weather for moving forward. The live stream setup took 3 hours. June's crew positioned cameras at angles I'd mapped out myself, one covering the podium, one on the crowd, one roving for reactions. But the 4th camera, the one nobody noticed, sat in my hand, a small device linked directly to the projection screen we'd erected behind the platform. Testing audio, June said into her earpiece. Kara, you receiving Lima Charlie. I replied automatically, loud and clear in military speak. It was Sunday, 2 p.m., one day after the resource fair. My parents thought they were done, that yesterday's apology had closed the chapter. They didn't know I'd filed additional evidence with the state attorney general, or that 3 federal investigators were standing in the crowd, or that this emergency community meeting was actually their trial by public jury. Mason had helped without knowing the full scope. Mom and Dad think this is damage control. He'd told me this morning. Their lawyer advised them to show up, act contrite, promise reform. They arrived at 2:30 p.m., Beverly clutching Frank's arm like a life preserver. They'd dressed carefully nice, but not too nice, patriotic, but not overdone, playing a new role, the repentant citizens. District Attorney Price stood at the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, We're here to address additional findings in the Proud of Our Heroes investigation. My parents' faces shifted from performed contrition to real fear. Ms. Whitfield, Price nodded to me, has provided supplementary evidence requiring immediate public disclosure. I walked to the podium in my flight suit, carrying a single folder. The projection screen behind me lit up with the first document and email from Frank to Beverly dated 3 years ago. Remember, nobody checks the veteran names. We can list anyone. The crowd murmured. My parents went rigid. 3 years of fraud, I began, voice steady as rotor blades. But yesterday, you only admitted to what you thought we knew. Let me show you what else you did. Click. New slide. A photograph of a ceremony where Frank presented an oversized check to Wounded Warriors Fund, a charity that didn't exist, created solely for photo opportunities. Click. Beverly's spreadsheet calculating how to bill personal vacations as veteran retreat planning sessions. Click. Frank's bar tab from the country club, $15,000 over 2 years, categorized as donor cultivation expenses. But then came the recording. I need you to hear something, I said, pulling out my phone, connecting it to the speaker system. This is from the microphone my father always wears. The one he forgot was recording during their planning sessions. Frank's voice filled the square. The beauty is, nobody questions supporting veterans. Wave a flag, shed a tear, write yourself a check. These small-town idiots eat it up. Beverly's laugh followed. And Kara's military connection gives us credibility, even if she's too stupid to capitalize on it herself. Frank again. Once Mason's established, we can cut Kara out entirely. Say she had PTSD, became unreliable. People will believe anything about damaged veterans. The square erupted. Veterans stood up. Families shouted. June's cameras captured every second. My parents looked like they'd been shot. Wait, I said into the microphone. There's more. The next recording was from last week, after the gala exposure. We'll play victim. Beverly's voice schemed. Say Kara's jealous, disturbed. Frank, you could cry on television. Say your daughter's military service changed her, made her paranoid. Perfect. Frank had agreed. Mental health angle. Nobody questions that with veterans. I let the silence stretch. Let the weight of their words settle on the crowd like ash. They planned to use veteran mental health stigma to discredit me, I said. To weaponize PTSD against their own daughter to protect their fraud. Leo Hart stood up in the crowd. I have PTSD. You were going to use our wounds as your shield. Paula Green joined him. My husband died serving. You were going to dishonor that for PR. More veterans stood. Then their families. Then regular citizens. The entire square was on its feet, staring at my parents. Beverly tried to run. She made it 3 steps before the FBI agents identified themselves, badges flashing in the afternoon sun. Federal charges wire fraud across state lines. The donations had come from 17 states. Kara, please, she screamed as they cuffed her. We're your parents. No, I said into the microphone, my voice carrying across the square. Parents protect their children. Parents take pride in their children's achievements. Parents don't steal valor and auction service. Frank didn't struggle as they cuffed him. He looked at me with something I'd never seen before, actual understanding of what he'd lost. Your flight jacket, he said quietly. It was never a costume, was it? No, it was armor. Against people like you. As the federal agents led them away, I pulled up the final slide on the projection screen. It wasn't evidence. It was a photograph from Afghanistan, my crew and I standing in front of our damaged Black Hawk, the one with 37 holes, the one that still flew. Leo Hart on the stretcher we'd just unloaded. Alive. Paula's husband Tom beside me, 2 weeks before his last mission. This is service, I told the crowd. Not performance, not brand, not profit. Service. June moved closer, cameras rolling. Ms. Whitfield, your parents face federal charges now. How do you feel? I looked at the photo behind me at the woman I'd been. Blood on her flight suit. Exhausted but unbroken. I feel like my call sign again. Nightingale 12, the night bird who sang to mark territory, to warn of danger, to guide others home. And your parents. They built their stage. They gathered their audience. They chose pride over truth. I turned to face the camera directly. That pride is now their prison. And unlike their foundation, federal prison doesn't accept fraudulent donations for early release. The crowd began dispersing slowly, veterans stopping to shake my hand, families offering support. Mason stood at the edge, torn between duty and family. "You okay?" I asked him. "They were going to call you crazy, use PTSD against you. They were going to try. I would have stopped them. I know." I squeezed his shoulder. "But I didn't need protection. I needed truth. Now we have it." The projection screen still showed my crew photo as the square emptied. June's team packed their equipment. D.A. Price collected his files. The FBI vehicles were long gone, carrying my parents to federal booking. Tomorrow, the story would break nationally. Tomorrow, my parents would trade their designer clothes for federal jumpsuits. Tomorrow, their pride would begin its 20-year sentence, the maximum for fraud over $250,000. But today, in this square where they'd hung their false banner, truth had won. I touched the patch on my flight jacket medical corps, night operations, combat certified, not a costume, not a performance, just service. The kind they'd never understand from inside a federal cell. The federal courthouse in Springfield stood like a monument to justice delayed. 3 weeks had passed since the arrest. Today, the formal arraignment would set the stage for their complete destruction. I sat in the gallery's third row, flight jacket pressed, patches aligned. The media section overflowed. June had made sure this went national. At 9:15 a.m., they brought my parents in. Orange suited them worse than I'd imagined. Beverly's face, stripped of makeup and pretense, looked hollow. Frank shuffled like he'd aged a decade in 3 weeks. They saw me and their eyes pleaded. I stared back, unmoved. "United States versus Frank and Beverly Whitfield," the bailiff announced. "Charges include wire fraud, mail fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to defraud the United States government. 23 counts total, each carrying 5 to 20 years. Their lawyer, some public defender since they couldn't afford private counsel after asset freezing, tried damage control." "Your Honor, my clients wish to plead not guilty," Frank interrupted, that old arrogance flickering. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Chen, no relation to anyone, just coincidence, stood up. "Your Honor, we'd like to present additional evidence that came to light this morning." My heart steadied. This was it. "Proceed." Chen pulled up a laptop. "We've discovered the defendants created multiple shell charities across 5 states, not just Proud of Our Heroes, but Patriots First, Freedom's Promise, and Valor's Reward. Total fraud exceeds $2 million. The courtroom erupted. June's fingers flew across her phone, updating the live blog. Beverly collapsed in her chair. Frank's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. "Furthermore," Chen continued, "we have evidence the defendants specifically targeted Gold Star families, promising memorial funds that never materialized." She clicked a button. The courtroom screens filled with faces: widows, orphans, parents who'd lost children in service, each with a dollar amount stolen. Mrs. Patricia Gonzalez lost her son in Fallujah. The defendants raised $30,000 in his name. She received nothing. Click. Mr. James Washington lost his daughter, a Navy corpsman. $50,000 raised. He received a folded flag they bought on Amazon for $12. Click after click, face after face. Grief monetized, sacrifice sold. "Your Honor," Chen said, "the government requests bail be revoked immediately." "Granted." The judge's gavel came down like artillery. As marshals moved toward them, Beverly screamed, "Kara, tell them we're good people. Tell them about the good we did." I stood. The courtroom quieted. "What good?" My voice carried clear and cold. The parties you threw yourselves, the glory you stole, the honor you sold by the pound. We're your parents, Frank shouted as they cuffed him. My parents died the day you called my service a costume. You're just criminals wearing their faces. They dragged them out, Beverly sobbing, Frank finally silent. After the hearing, Chen approached me in the hallway. Ms. Whitfield, we need to discuss your testimony for the trial. Whatever you need. It won't be easy. They'll try to paint you as vindictive, possibly unstable. Let them. I've been painted by enemy fire. Their words are nothing. Mason found me outside, still in his uniform from shift. Fed charges. Jesus. Kara. They earned them. Mom called me from holding. She wants me to testify that you've had mental health issues since Afghanistan. Will you? He looked at me, really looked at me. I'll testify that you came back with honor they couldn't understand and integrity they couldn't buy. That evening, I sat with Leo Hart and Paula Green in a diner outside town. The TV above the counter ran June's special report. The Chiron read, Stolen Valor, How One Couple Defrauded America's Heroes. 2 million. Leo whistled. That's a lot of prosthetics never bought. Lot of kids' colleges never funded, Paula added. Lot of lies, I said. The TV showed my parents' mug shots. Then it showed that photo my crew in Afghanistan, the shot-up Black Hawk behind us. That's you, the waitress said, recognizing me. You're the daughter? I'm the pilot. She refilled my coffee without being asked. Wouldn't take payment. My boy's in Germany, airborne. Thank you for your service. Thank him for his... My phone buzzed. Chen texting. Trial date set. February 15th. We'll need 30 days of prep minimum. February 15th. 1 year to the day from when they'd tried to auction my jacket. The TV kept running footage, the square confrontation, the arrest, interviews with defrauded families. But then something new video from inside the federal holding facility. Someone had leaked footage of Frank in his cell. No longer the big man with the microphone, just an old fraud in orange, cleaning toilets on work detail. That's your father, Paula asked. That's a criminal who shares my DNA. She nodded. Fair enough. We sat there, 3 veterans bound by service and betrayal, watching justice unfold on a screen above bitter coffee and day-old pie. My phone rang. Beverly's lawyer. Ms. Whitfield, your mother wants to make a deal. Full confession in exchange for reduced sentence. But she needs something from you. What? A statement that you believe she can be rehabilitated. That underneath the crimes. She's still your mother. I thought about every veteran she'd robbed, every family she'd lied to, every time she'd diminished my service for her comfort. No deal. She'll likely die in prison. Then she'll die knowing exactly what her pride cost her. I hung up. Leo raised his coffee cup. To justice. To truth, Paula added. I raised mine. To everyone who never made it home, whose honor they tried to steal. We drank to the dead while my parents sat in separate cells. Their empire of lies collapsed. Their pride, now just evidence exhibit numbers in a federal case. Tomorrow, I'd fly medical transport, real work, honest work. Tonight, I'd sleep knowing their own vanity had built their prison, bar by bar, lie by lie, until the only thing left of their pride was a number on a federal jumpsuit. The TV showed one last image before commercial the Maple Ridge Town Square, where their banner once hung. In its place, a simple memorial names of local veterans who died in service. Real heroes. Real sacrifice. No performance required. The February wind cut across the federal courthouse steps like rotor wash. 6 months of preparation had led to this moment. Inside, 12 jurors would decide if 23 counts of federal fraud would stick. But I already knew the verdict. Pride had built their gallows. They'd kicked the chair themselves. At 10 a.m. sharp, the prosecutor called me to the stand. State your name for the record. Kara Whitfield, former Chief Warrant Officer 3, United States Army. Call sign Nightingale 12. For 3 hours, I laid out evidence, bank records, recordings. The jacket they'd tried to auction, each piece another nail. When the defense tried to paint me as vindictive, I simply pulled up my flight records. 943 combat missions, 2,619 lives evacuated. While I was pulling soldiers from fire, they were stealing funds meant for those soldiers' families. The defense attorney asked if I felt guilty for turning in my parents. I feel guilty for waiting so long. When Beverly took the stand, she tried tears. But federal prosecutors don't care about tears. They care about receipts. And Chen had receipts for everything, every dinner charged to charity, every vacation hidden as veteran outreach, every lie told to grieving families. Frank tried defiance. We helped the community see veterans as heroes. No, Chen countered, showing his emails. You helped yourself to money meant for heroes. The jury deliberated for 2 hours, 120 minutes to weigh $2 million of theft against 2 lifetimes of false pride. Guilty. All 23 counts. The judge didn't hesitate. Frank Whitfield, 25 years federal prison. Beverly Whitfield, 25 years federal prison. Sentences to run concurrently. No possibility of parole for 15 years. They cuffed them immediately. No grace period. No goodbye. Beverly looked at me one last time, her mouth forming the word, please. I stood, squared my shoulders, and walked out. Mason waited in the hallway, promotion stripes new on his uniform. It's done. It's done. 25 years. They'll die in there. They chose that when they chose to steal from the dead. 3 days later, I stood in Maple Ridge Town Square for the ribbon cutting, where, proud of our heroes' headquarters once stood, we'd opened a real veteran resource center. Leo Hart cut the ribbon with Paula Green. The sign read simple, Service First Center, no glory required. June filmed it all for her documentary's final scene. Any regrets, she asked, camera steady on my face? 1. I regret every day I stayed quiet to protect their reputation while they destroyed others' lives. The center opened to a line of veterans needing help. Real help. Not Gallus or Glory. Just service members serving service members. Mason worked the intake desk on his days off. D.A. Price served on the board, ensuring every dollar tracked to its purpose. That night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out the last piece of evidence I'd never submitted a photo from my childhood. Me at 7, wearing my father's suit jacket, playing important businessman. Beverly laughing, calling me Daddy's little executive. They'd loved me once, before pride consumed them, before performance mattered more than people, before they decided my service was worth less than their social standing. I burned the photo. The past was dead. Only service remained. A text came through from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Inmate Beverly Whitfield had been assigned kitchen duty. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. Inmate Frank Whitfield worked laundry. Same overnight hours. They'd clean and serve for 25 years in buildings where real heroes recovered from real service. Their pride had built their stage, gathered their audience, and written their verdict. Every donor they'd fooled, every veteran they'd robbed, every lie they'd told it all led here. To cells 6 by 8 feet, where designer clothes became prison uniforms, where their names became numbers. I looked at my flight jacket hanging by the door. Tomorrow. I had 3 medical transports scheduled, a teenager needing cancer treatment, an infant requiring specialized surgery, a veteran heading to the VA for his final care. Real missions, real service. My parents would wake to concrete and steel, their empire of lies reduced to federal identification numbers. They'd built their pride so high they couldn't see the ground rushing up to meet them. The last photo June sent me showed them at sentencing. Heads bowed, signing forms. The caption read, "When pride becomes prison." I turned off the lights and looked out at the airfield. Clear skies forecasted, perfect for flying, perfect for moving forward without the weight of their false glory. They'd taught me to bow my head to protect their image. The Army taught me to hold it high in actual service. In the end, their own pride became their judgment, their sentence, and their cell. When they bowed their heads to sign their confession, I no longer needed their pride in me because the pride they'd built had been converted to justice, delivered on the very stage they'd created. 25 years, 9,125 days, 219,000 hours. Not enough for what they stole, but enough to know that pride, false pride, the kind built on others' sacrifice, always falls. And when it falls, it buries those who built it. Thank you for listening to this story of justice served cold. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Kara's position? Your stories matter too, and I read every comment. Until next time, remember true pride comes from service, not performance.